right, friends, it's Mrs. Miller, and we are back at the Missing Manatee, chapter 13. Remember, Skeeter had just taken the rope, snuck onto Dirty Dan's boat. He felt like a criminal. Was he a criminal? And matched up where it was cut. It was a perfect match. So let's see what happens in chapter 13 and how much farther Skeet goes. At home, there was a note on the refrigerator from Meemaw. It was hanging right next to the menu from the Golden Moon Chinese restaurant, which I saw every time I got a snack or a glass of milk. The sentence, "The customer is booze," always caught my eye and cracked me up, but not now. Meemaw's note said that she was shopping and would be home soon, and that Mom had to work late because somebody was sick. In a way, I was relieved that I didn't have to talk to either of them, or to anybody yet, but I could hardly stand being alone with my thoughts. I paced from the living room to the kitchen and back, Dirty Dan's treachery burning in my stomach like hot sauce. Sriracha. I went to my bedroom and took out my backpack, where I'd put my still life objects for art class. I dumped them all out on my bed and examined the tennis ball closely. It looked as if it had been chewed on, but I couldn't be sure. Staring blindly at a pile of stuff on my bed, I wondered how the man I'd seen tenderly releasing a tarpon back into the water could be the same man who put a bullet in the head of a harmless manatee. None of it made sense. When Meemaw came home, I was glad to have a break from my repetitive, useless thoughts. I helped her bring the groceries in from the car. "Your mom is madder than spit that she's ended up having to work an extra day when you've got vacation," she said, as we were putting away the food. "She said to tell you she's sorry." "It's okay," I murmured. "It's that new employee, Veronica," Meemaw declared. "She calls in sick every time she has a hangnail, I swear. Now, what shall we make ourselves for supper, Skeeter? Are you in the mood for tuna fish or maybe Meemaw's world-famous macaroni and cheese?" I tried to rouse myself and pay attention. "What? Oh, I don't know." "Well, if you don't know, who does?" I shrugged. "Either one's fine, I guess." Meemaw put her hands on her hips and gave me a penetrating look. Penetrating. She's staring intently. She's getting down to the dirty. "Either you've gone and fallen in love or something's troubling you. Which one is it?" I looked up at her surprised. "Your mind is 1,000 miles away, Skeeter. You think I can't tell when I'm talking to a fence post?" "Sorry," I said. Then I thought about her question. "In love? Who would I be in love with?" "That's what I was hoping you'd be telling me," Meemaw said, lifting her eyebrows and grinning. "Now that I've got your attention," I shook my head and grinned back. "Sorry, Meemaw. It's nothing like that." Then I felt my smile fade. "So something is wrong." "Yeah, it is." "Is it that paper for your English teacher?" "No, way worse than that." Meemaw's expression grew serious. Before she could ask, I blurted out, "I found the manatee." "Well, good for you, darling," she exclaimed. "That's wonderful." She looked at me again and asked uncertainly, "Isn't it?" I let out a big sigh. It seemed I talked more to Meemaw than anybody else these days, which was okay. I mean, Meemaw was a good person to talk to, and whatever she had to say, she always gave it to you straight, and I liked that. But in a weird way, I didn't want to tell her what I'd found out, because telling her would make it really true. Even while I knew Dan had to be the killer, part of me couldn't accept it. I wanted to go back to not knowing, but that was something I'd never be able to do. "Dirty Dan did it," I said at last. It came out in a whisper. I said louder, "Dirty Dan is the killer." Meemaw looked surprised. Then her expression grew grave. She pulled 2 stools from under the kitchen counter and sat on one. Still looking at me, she gestured for me to take one. My legs suddenly felt too weak to hold me up, and I fell gratefully onto the stool. My shoulders slumped and I leaned forward, my face in my hands. "I can't believe it," I said, as hot tears slipped through between my fingers. Meemaw didn't say anything right away. She waited until I'd got a hold of myself. When I raised my head and wiped my shirt sleeve over my face, she said, "Tell me what happened, Skeeter." I told her everything, not even caring that now Mom would find out about the gun being in the boat and all the rest of it, because it turned out Mom had been right about Dirty Dan. No, that wasn't exactly true. She didn't know the half of how truly dirty Dan was. After I'd finished, Meemaw was quiet again for a while before she finally spoke. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know, I said. I'd tell Mac, except he's down in the Keys. After a moment, I said, I guess I could tell Earl. As soon as I'd said it, it seemed to me to be the obvious answer. Let the police handle it? Meemaw nodded. Telling Earl's one possibility, she agreed. Or, she paused before continuing. I looked up, the question in my eyes. You could talk to Dirty Dan first. I stared at Meemaw, puzzled. But why? I asked. To hear his side of the story, of course. But what could he possibly say that would make a difference, I said. Ask him, Meemaw said. When I looked at her in confusion, she said, look, Skeet. You like Dan, right? You like him a lot. But that was before. Just let me finish here. What about the things you liked him for? Did they all change? My head was spinning. Are you saying because Dirty Dan is a great fisherman and helped me catch a tarpon, that makes it okay that he killed a manatee? Meemaw shook her head. No, Skeeter, she said, and her voice was softer than usual. All I'm saying is that if a man was your friend, you might want to go to him first before you go to the law. I'd want a friend of mine to do that, wouldn't you? Well, yeah, I thought. I guessed I would. But I'd never actually thought of Dan as my friend. He was Mac's friend and Meemaw's. He was a grown-up, an adult. I couldn't just go over to his house and accuse him even though he deserved it. I didn't have any idea what to say to him. On the other hand, I had to do something soon. The vultures would make short work of what was left of the manatee, and that was my main evidence, along with the rope and ball and gun. So, you think I should go over there and say what? I wanted Meemaw to tell me what exactly to say, but all she said was, up to you, Skeeter. It's only 4 o'clock, so there's plenty of time before we'll be ready to eat. She began puttering around in the kitchen, taking out what she needed to make supper. I sat there, and the more I thought about what Meemaw had said about talking to Dan, the more it seemed the right thing to do. If I ran to Earl, I'd be tattling. Something a mad, scared kid would do. Talking to Dan man to man felt more grown up. Okay, I'll go, I said. The words even as my mind was screaming. But you are just a kid, and you are mad and scared too. Let me get my purse, said Meemaw. You're coming? I asked in surprise. I believe you've made a good decision, Skeeter, but you don't think I'm going to let you go by yourself, do you? I was embarrassed by the flood of relief I felt. I've known Dan for a long time, Skeet, and I think he deserves to be heard, Meemaw went on. But he might be a lawbreaker, and we know he has a gun, and I'm not taking any chances with my only grandchild. Are you ready? I nodded dumbly and followed her to the car. I was so glad I wasn't going to have to confront Dirty Dan all myself. Meemaw was going to be there, and she'd know what to say. She drove into the back lot at Larry's and pulled up in front of Dan's camper, and I opened the car door and started to get out. Good luck, Skeeter, darling, Meemaw said. I stopped stunned. Aren't you coming? I'll be right here if you need me, she said brightly. But I talk to the man, Skeet, she said, reaching over and squeezing my hand. As I walked towards the camper, I imagined myself saying to Dan, now don't try anything. I brought my grandmother, and she's right outside. I mean, if I brought my grandma, you'd be scared. I pictured Meemaw hitting Dirty Dan over the head with her purse. It might have been funny if I hadn't been so scared. I stood at the door thinking I wouldn't even have to knock because Dan could surely hear the pounding of my heart. So he's come to a conclusion and he's finally told the whole story. Who did he tell the whole story to? How do you think he feels? How do you think you would feel? You have to confront this grown adult now because you've discovered their secret. I think he made the right choice, definitely, in confronting Dan before being a tattletale, don't you?